All right, let me just check and see if there's anything on my end here, Tony. Every now and then the technology just does that to us, so we check it to make sure everything all right. Tony, are you hearing me? I'm seeing you, but for some reason I'm just not hearing you at all. Okay, so yes, I'm now hearing you.
Wonderful.
All right, I don't know.
The technology needs a little bit of encouragement. Yes.
Well, every now and then we get that sort of encouragement taking place. Oh my word!
Yes. So just give me 1 second. Let me plug back in something here. Right. I think we're good to go now.
Yes.
Yeah. I was reflecting on the lyrics of Denise's piece in the background there. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes you listen to a piece of music. You will know that very well, Charlo.
Yeah.
You listen to a piece of music for years, and then suddenly you hear things that you perhaps didn't pay too much attention to before. And Denise talking about, all the great wonders of Trinidad and Tobago. And she's kind to us by saying that, our bad habits, she identifies them as tomfoolery. In other words, we shouldn't take them too seriously because we have all these wonderful cultural aspects to life in Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding everything else.
That is so true.
Yeah. Well, we're going to reflect on some of that this afternoon. We are expecting the man I call if you like, the Grandmaster of Politics in Trinidad and Tobago, the Grandmaster of the People's National Movement, Ferdi. Have you got Ferdi on the line, Sir Charles?
Yeah, I got him. Mr. Fererriah, are you hearing Tony Fraser?
Yes,
okay?
I'm hearing you quite clear.
All right. Are you hearing Tony Fraser?
Yes, I'm also hearing Tony.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Okay, so we got Ferdi on the line, and we expect at the bottom of the hour to get another P&M stalwart, Robert Hunte, who was a minister in the Rowley government and departed company. We were not too absolutely certain if he was asked to leave, if he left on his own option. Maybe we'll ask him that this afternoon. But there was clear disagreement between the two in cabinet over some matter. As I remember it, it had to do with the Water and Sewerage Authority. Robert Hunte was the minister with responsibility for WASA and other public utilities, as I try to remember them, TNTEC for sure. And so on. So he's going to join us a little bit later in the program. And Ferdi is here with us. And Ferdi, how are you going, my friend?
Well, not too bad. Of course, at this age, it's difficult to know whether you could have done better or worse. But I have
Yeah.
no complaints. On the 14th of June, God's be alive, I'll be 93 years of age.
Well, you can't complain about that, right?
No, if I complain, I'll be pelting stone at the master.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Ferdi, we must sit one day and talk about your life and your movements in the life and your, I read something in one of your books talking about getting interested and hearing Dr. Williams in the square and getting interested and following him around. And he's asking, who's this little fellow who comes around here to all of the political meetings? We should sit and chat about that. And, the Dr. Williams and all of the idiosyncrasies, what he
Yes,
brought
he
to
then
the
called me a
country.
fanatic.
Yeah,
He referred to me as that fellow is a
etc.
fanatic.
So, and of course, Ferdi had a time away from the PNM and then back and so on and so on and so on. All of that is fine. But what I want to engage Ferdi in this afternoon is to reflect on the politics of the day, reflect on the results of the general election, what transpired. It is clear from the figures given by the EBC that between the 2015 election and the 2025 poll, the PNM lost over 150,000 votes. They lost 50 between 2015 and 2020 and over 100,000 between 2020 and 25. I asked the general secretary of the party, yesterday, Foster Cummings, about what was some of the reasons for this dramatic fall in public support, popular support, and what has the party thought about it since then. But his was a kind of evasive response that they're going to have to look at the data and get some analyses done on it, etc., etc. The kind of thing that you expect to be said. He did, however, give some kind of agreement when I suggested what is a popular suggestion that Dr. Rowley's attempt, well, not attempt, but Dr. Rowley's putting Stuart Young into the office of prime ministership without going through some kind of process outside of what may be considered a fixed general council meeting. And he said he gave some kind of acknowledgement of that, but he did not go further. Ferdi, I am sure that you've had.
Hello? Hello? Yeah.
Tony, I am losing you again.
Hello, I'm hearing you.
No, Ferdi, I know you are there. I'm losing the audio, and Tony said again. Tony, check whatever it is you did just now again.
Right. Audio come back? Some
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
something.
Is it? I
Are
wonder
you
if it's.
hearing me now?
Yeah, I'm hearing you now.
Okay. So Ferdi, what are your initial thoughts on why this dramatic fall in the support of the People's National Movement between 2015 and 2025?
Well, Tony, I suppose when you are around as long as I am, I have been a political activist since 1946. At the age of 14, I think I told you, as a lance corporal in the Butler Army of Liberation. So I have been in the vanguard of every major struggle since the granting of a Dun franchise in 1946. I heard the explanation given to you by the General Secretary of the party, which may be a small part of small ingredient of what happened. But it is not the complete story. You see, to me, the most difficult, the biggest problem that faced the PNM. Because don't forget, Tony, it started in Tobago.
Yeah.
4 years ago, the PNM, at the last general election, won the 2 seats in Tobago handsomely. Sampa Kojo won by over 3,000 votes. Ayana reps are out, won by about nearly 3,000, 2,000. That was September. By January, the local PHA elections in Tobago, you may recall, the PNM dropped dramatically. From 11 seats, they went down to 6. You remember the 6-6?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
So that sent a powerful signal that something was wrong in one of your major strongholds where you held the 2 seats. On that occasion, I wrote a letter to the Trinidad Guardian, which I have in my possession, requesting the political leader, my dear friend Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, that it may be necessary and or appropriate for him to make, you remember his book, From Mason Hall to Whitehall?
Yes.
To make
Yes.
a return trip now from Whitehall back to Mason Hall and reconnect with the people and the organizations who helped him on that perilous journey from the Red Sea in Tobago to the Promised Land at Whitehall. I have that document, seeing that the signs had begun to emerge that something was wrong. And he proceeded to amend the Constitution and increase it by 3 seats. And you remember the outcome of that. Almost 15-1, 14-1. It was 14-1, and I think they won by 1 seat. You recall?
Yeah.
So the signals of a level of dissatisfaction, whether it was at the leadership level or the government level, had started to emerge. And therefore the party hierarchy, the strategic political high command, had an opportunity then to do a proper introspection, which I recommended. I say, what is it? Find out what went wrong. That within 4 months, there was a dramatic change in the voice of the electorate. That was in Tobago. I also wrote a letter and went on the, I think it was 95.5. And I mentioned the question of the General Secretary, the very General Secretary who you just referred to. Being General Secretary of the party, in other words, Chief Executive, he's the General Manager of the party. He's the General. He has a constituency. He's also a minister. Because Balize House is the center of political gravity. The General Secretary, number one responsibility is to ensure that the party's election machinery is at all times sufficiently well lubricated for any emergency by elections. When you have, and this has nothing to do with Foster Comment, it has to do with the office. When you have your General Secretary, who is your Chief Executive Officer, as was previously Nicholas Simon, the Wilton Rogers, Nicholas Simonet, Elmo Gonzalez, Martin Joseph, Maurice Marshall. When your General Secretary is preoccupied with servicing a constituency, running a ministry, a constituency in a very depressed area, where are you finding time to do the party work? And I made it clear this had nothing to do with Morris. It had to do with the policy. The man that we built the PNM after the general elections of 1946, we lost the federal elections in 1958. We lost the local governments in Tabadis Barrage and the PDP. simply because 70% of the party officers had become ministers in the 1950s. Larry Constantine, the chairman, became a minister. Donald Grenado, the secretary, became a minister. Kamaluddin Mohammed became a minister. Eric Williams became chief minister. Pat Solomon became. The point I am making is the responsibilities at ministerial and representative level does not permit you to service the constituency or the party as is required. The most valuable asset in the PNM over the years, as you know, Tony, has been the power of its election machine. Our party capacity for bringing out the voters, particularly in the strongholds. When you look at that, and you see what happened, the marginals are one thing. The marginals, as you know, are always unpredictable. But when the PNM loses in Labray and Point Fonte and had about 3 or 4 other controversial seats in the East-West corridor, what clearly emerges is not only the question of the enforcement of Stuart Young, is that the party election machinery completely collapsed. The party officers were not functioning. They didn't have an idea. As a matter of fact, when you look at them election night, they all look like they was in space. I don't think they anticipated. They had an idea of what was taking place on the ground. Simply because they were preoccupied with, 1, the office they held. 2, a high percentage of the Hubris syndrome had stepped into the party, beginning with the political and prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time in the history, and I sent this message to them, it's the first time in the history of the PNM, and Tony, you probably not a role in the neighborhood. The PNM went into elections with almost every trade union opposed to it. We came from an era out of the 24 candidates in 1956, we had 4 trade unionists. John Hackshaw, OWTU, Oli Mohammed Shura Workers Union, Donald Grenado, Union of Commercial, and Ulrich Lee. Out of the 24 candidates, 2 won, Hackshaw lost, Oli Mohammed lost, Ulrich Lee won, Grenado won. I'm making this point that we have always had, as you know, TSTT, the communication workers on TST was known as party group number 1.
Mm-hmm.
The seamen and waterfront workers was known as party group number 2. Going way back from the days of Claude Drayton, Daniel Reid, Sam Worrell. So we always had a link with the trade union movement. Come 2025, all the trade unions who didn't join up with the UNC, completely disassociated themselves from the PNM. All these signals were emerging. As a matter of fact, I sent messages, because I'm not an active party member, find out what is happening. Over the last 10 years, I would say not the whole 10, very early, he set up the tri-party, as you remember. Shortly after that, there was you remember the Farrell Commission. After that, there was complete disengagement with the Luba movement. They put them on no boards. They got no awards. They were not given an opportunity from the very inception. The Senate in 1962. John Rojas was an independent senator. You remember that?
Yes, yes.
Only that he was a representative at the Marlborough House Conference for the independent discussions. So was H.A. Bennett, the big business. So the unions have always had a special position in the hierarchy of the PNM. If you look at it there, even the traditional Siemens, Nuge, the biggest union in the country, Natty Critchlow was a PNM senator. Carltel was a PNM senator, the communication. And I don't know what was responsible for it. But the leadership of party and government completely ignored the trade union movement. Did you look at that element?
Yeah, yeah.
They even the transport, over the years, there have been elements that have been uphold. The OWGU with George Weeks, Joe Young, my good friend with the transport, and there was always an element uphold. But the PNM had, in the north particularly, the strong unions amalgamated national union. So there are a number of ingredients that are mainly responsible. The breakdown of the election party machinery.
Yeah.
The complete ignoring and contempt displayed by the government to the trade union movement.
And one of the points that you've brought out there, Ferdi, which is one to consider, and which is one I am sure played a significant role in the loss of support, is that trade unions and their members, they are in the business of seeking assistance and seeking benefits. And I'm not talking here about handouts. I'm talking about jobs. I'm talking about
when they have the constituents,
so on, things that matter to people in the trade union movement and who have their supporters spread abroad in the country. So that what I take out of, one of the things that I take out of all that you've just said is that with the lack of involvement with the government and concern about the trade union movement, they were in fact ignoring the concerns and the needs of large numbers of people. Yes?
I mean, look at the PSA. They went on a public platform. The first expression of the new president, we come to get rid of the PNM. All the years, as you would remember, James Manswell, Jennifer Batiste, Clyde Weatherhead, they had their problems with the government, but they never came out so forceful. Displaying a kind of, well, they must go. I mean, and nobody apparently. Another element, Tony, that we must look at is Tobago. The two most, in my time, most powerful sons of Tobago. One, A&R Robinson. Two, Keith Rowley. Both products of the PNM. Both bishops, products of Bishop School. Both married to Trinidadian women. Both residing in Trinidad. Robinson lost his first election in Tobago in 1956. He was defeated by APT James by 200 and something votes.
Fargo.
Keith Rowley. Huh?
Fargo.
Keith Rowley lost his first election in Tobago in 1981 when he was defeated again by some 200. So there are so many things. 1958, Arthur Napoleon Urban Robinson won the federal election, defeating James in Tobago. And then 1961, he won a seat in the general elections and became Trinidad and Tobago's first Minister of Finance. Robinson since has never lost an election in Tobago. You can't go to Robinson, you can't beat him in a polling station in Castara. The political leader of the PNM, ex-Prime Minister Rowley, he couldn't even bring home Mason Hall where he was born. You see, all of these things got to be looked at in a proper history and say, why this distinguished son of Tobago, resident in Trinidad, represented in a Trinidad constituency, why Robinson continues to be one of the most respected. The only person I know probably might be a little more respected in Tobago right now is Orville London. Orville London brought back Tobago to us under Patrick Manning. Robinson kept it for over 20. So when these signs of slippage start, you've got to go down on the ground and find out what is responsible. It started in Tobago, and no attention was paid to it. They simply sat on the ivory towers, ignoring. In addition to the point that Foster comment made. I make no apologies for saying Stuart Young is a very good product. Badly marketed, badly packaged and badly marketed. The Stuart Young was in my home here when my wife died. He came to pay his respect. He's no friend of mine. I know him. He knows me, and he came to pay his respect. And I sat down in my home here in the presence of several people, and I told him, the Prime Minister making you a target. What's that? Be careful. When you get up making statements, you make Gary Sobers, you go to oil conferences, and the Minister of Energy, Franklin Khan, is there. And when you come back, you're paying tribute with completely excluding the Minister. You don't know the extent, I'm telling you now, to which that affected Franklin Khan. You remember these things?
Yes, yes.
Everything was Stuart Young and Stuart Young and Stuart Young. We are human beings.
Going back to the point that you make, Ferdi, about Tobago, I thought that, when the Duke and Augustine party won, the Tobago Party of the People, there was an engagement of hostility between the Prime Minister and the Tobago House of Assembly, which I thought was quite unnecessary and
Totally
only led
unnecessary.
to increasing conflict between the two, between Tobago and Trinidad. And I wondered at times if the Prime Minister was not taking into consideration beyond the House of Assembly. If you lose the House of Assembly, in a way that balances off the power between the two islands. But inevitably, it will impact on the central government and the general elections. And I thought that was an unnecessary conflict that Dr. Rowley allowed himself as the Prime Minister to get involved with the Tobago House of Assembly chief, who was clearly spoiling for a fight. But I would think that the Prime Minister should have been above that and should have exercised some kind of rapprochement between the two.
Well, Tony, you're absolutely correct. As Michelle Obama said, when they go low, you go high. And this, one of the major factors in the PNM defeat, make no mistake about it, is the Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister, political leader, completely proved that what Manning was saying about him was right. That arrogance. I mean, I got the chief executive of the Royal Bank, Ron Harford, to sponsor 41. I don't know if you're aware of this. 41 copies of a book called The Hubris Syndrome.
Okay.
So the members are the 41 members of Parliament through that. So read this. It's quite clear that the political, he became totally disconnected. He lost his footings. The party, I don't know if you're aware, the party almost became part of his property. He drew the lines, and look at the latest piece of tomfoolery. After all that has happened, you come to Balize House Sunday, Wednesday night. A General Council meeting is taking place. And your only decision is to revoke the appointment of Colm Imwood and the two of the deputies.
Education Minister and somebody else.
No, actually, what is the reason for that? So today, the party, for the first time, as far as I recall, is without a leader. And this brings me to another point. This evening, the Honorable Penny Beckles is being sworn in as the leader of the opposition. But she's not the leader of the party. And this, to me, although the General Secretary yesterday tried to explain that there is no clause in the Constitution from it. I totally disagree with that. If even there's no clause, the General Council has the opportunity, where a situation is silent, to take a decision immediate after Williams died on the 29th of March 1981. George Chambers, who was assumed not only the point, but the leadership of the party and took us into the election. A similar situation developed when 33-3, when a completely unknown contender, Patrick Manning, at the expense of Muriel Donovan, who was the most senior person, the party wasn't ready for women, became leader of the opposition. And as far, do you recall any contention there as to what Manning sort of automatically became leader of the party? And not only that, Manning got together with Maurice Marshall, who was the general secretary, and Ken Valley, and they've toured all the constituencies. Manning became, after the convention was held, Aeneas Wills contested and he defeated. But in the meantime, it's the first time in the history of the party when Dr. Rowley, when Manning was chased out of that historical night, 2010, Rowley automatically became leader of the party until the convention. So if even the Constitution doesn't provide it, the General Council, the only body can overrule the convention. Today, you have Rowley had Stuart Young on a leash. He remained political leader, Stuart Young Prime Minister. Today, she's sworn in. She's on a leash too.
Yeah.
But she's not the leader of the party. This, as far as I'm concerned, unprecedented in the history of the PNM. Have you looked at that? If she's good enough, Tony, to be the face of the PNM in the Legislative Council, the leader of the opposition, she's the leader of the opposition. If she is good enough to be the face of the PNM in the National Parliament, what's wrong with the General Council appointing as interim leader till the convention? So the party is now sailing with no leader. You have an opposition leader, but you don't have a political leader. And in the process of reorganization and reconstruction, whatever you may call it, the person to lead that is the leader, and that must begin today, if not yesterday. What happened? Put introspection. Go out there and let your party members exhale. Instead of the monologues, you remember those monologues with Dr. Rowley? He called them meeting the conversation to the people.
Yes.
And he sat on the stage.
It was really him preaching to the groups of citizens that were assembled.
Correct. I sat down here many nights before my deceased, right? And I said, what is this? Before the question finished, he ready to answer. I don't know if he understands the extent to which this, and this cowl on his face, all these things, unlike the UNC with the traditional base, and it is explained today, the marginal voters. One of the members of parliament got up on a platform, young fellow, just before the election. Dr. Rowley is the greatest leader in the history of the PNM. He is the greatest statesman in the Western Hemisphere. Making these reckless, stupid, irresponsible statements. The point I am making is that the party lost its way. And the leadership of the party beginning has to accept full responsibility for that. And they continue with it.
Right.
You're so confident. The parliamentarians select Penny. The General Council confirm it. But why didn't you confirm us as interim leader of the party? So the party, from what this general sec is likely to have no deal for the next 6 months.
Yeah. So we are talking with Ferdi Fererriah, who I call the grandmaster of politics and the PNM in Trinidad and Tobago, a man who goes back, as he said at the start of the program, to the late 1940s, the period when the franchise was won by Trinidad and Tobago. This is the full franchise that people of a certain age, without
1946, I was there
reference
when
to,
Albert Gum defeated Supriani.
right, without reference to property and all of that, has been involved in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago with the PNM, with the ONR, and he has come along the
Not the
way.
NAR. No. I began as a
The ONR, not the
ONR.
NAR,
I
the
was never
ONR.
part of the NAR. I
Yeah,
took strong objections to the ONR entering the NAR.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was not
All
supportive
right,
of that.
so we are expecting Robert Hunte. I don't know if he's in the room yet, Charlo. Any sign of him?
No sign of him as yet, Tony. I just checked a little while and I'm checking now and he's not there as yet.
Okay, so we are expecting Robert Hunt, who was a minister in the Rowley government. And as I said at the top, there was a falling out on conflict, and one left, i.e., Robert Hunt,
Robert is my good friend. Robert
resigned from
but there
the
was another
cabinet
aspect.
and made his way on his own. But Ferdi, I
But
want
there
you
was
to go
another
back
aspect to it, Tony. You remember Robert Lee Hunt was twice nominated to contest the seat in Labrie, and he was rejected by Dr. Early. You remember that?
Yeah.
Twice. They nominated him. He rejected it. They sent it back. They sent back Robert Lee Hunt. Unlike what Williams did in the case of the Millstones.
Yeah. What's his name?
Princely Barrow, Shah Mohammed,
Barrow. But
Lionel Robinson,
Ferdi, I
Victor
want
Camp.
you to go back to explain something that you talked about, which is a phenomenon in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed politics all over the world. This sense of when a political leader, a prime minister, a president gets into office, there's a sense that takes him or her over, mainly him.
Well, it
That
is called the
there's a
Hubris
feeling of
ritual.
invincibility, a feeling of a sense of rightness. We have President Trump now thinking that he should be the Pope, the successor to the Pope. How do you explain
Well,
that phenomenon of
well,
political leaders getting this hubristic kind of personality attached to them?
well, Tony, it's not Donald Trump. It's the latest, but Donald Trump, that was expected of Donald Trump. There's nothing new about Donald Trump. I don't think anybody who knows Donald Trump or have been reading should be surprised of anything Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a rich buffoon.
Yeah.
The fact that it's some of the greatest leaders in the world. This book is written. I don't know if you ever saw it, you ever came across it. Anytime you're available, I can't promise to lend you, but you can come to my home. In Sickness and in Power, written by Dr. David Owen, a former foreign secretary in the James Callaghan. So he's both a politician and a medical practitioner. It's one of the most fantastic books I have ever read in my life. And it goes back over the last 100 years, going way back to Theodore Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Churchill, and he has identified foreign secretary that became Prime Minister of England. Yeah, Anthony Eden. Tony, if you want to understand what power is about, read that book. I got Ron Harvard to donate 41 copies, courtesy Republic Bank, to the 41 members of Parliament. I said, read this and understand what power. There is a letter in the book. It's one of the most fantastic and fascinating documents I've ever seen in my life. And that means something. So Winston Churchill's wife, Clementine, I can send a copy to you, wrote a letter shortly after he assumed the prime ministership, after Neville Chamberlain was removed in England. About 1941, she wrote him a letter. That is his beloved wife, Clementine. And Tony, if you read that letter, she's telling him in that letter how that letter got out and became available. God alone knows. She's telling him, people are complaining about your behavior. You're becoming too arrogant. And she said, I know you're under pressure, but watch it. You have the power. You don't have to behave like that. And she closes the letter, Tony Fraser, I teach him. Your caring, loving, and watchful wife, Clementine. It's documented. I break reference to that to indicate to you the level to which power can destroy people. This adulation, watch every night what goes on at those meetings. The political leader arrives late. Am I wrong? He comes late.
No, you're not wrong at all. You're right.
And there's a reason for that. And the whole crowd stands up. And the Savior has arrived. That is, and they all enjoy it. Both sides do it. They don't understand the danger, that's the signal that sends to a leader's head.
Yeah.
In the book, he refers to both Bush.
Ferdi, before you move on, was that the case with Dr. Williams? Did he arrive late with an entourage bowing down at his feet?
Well, not really. Williams, that era wasn't as bad, when he coming in. And then we got to be careful, Tony, that you can't compare Dr. Williams. Remember, Dr. Williams come at a time. We were colonial, and we looked at Dr. Williams like Kwame Nkrumah, Nehru, Bandara Naik. We look at these people as gods because they are the liberators. So that during that period could have been accommodated. But how many years we have passed that stage? But when somebody could get up, Tony, in a meeting and say, a member of parliament, you must know a member of parliament, Dr. Rowley is the greatest leader in the history of the PNM. This fellow certainly doesn't know the history of the PNM. And he goes on to say that Dr. Rowley is the greatest statesman in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, this is the level. And you know why they do these things? Because they know the leaders enjoy hearing it. Did you follow for the last 4 or 5 years the kind of obeisance? And no minister was prepared to open a project without praising Dr. Rowley. Am I wrong?
No, you're very right. And in addition to that, Ferdi, he dispensed criticism and ignorance of his ministers as he went along. He was the king, giving praise and also dispensing some punishment to the ministers.
I mean, everyone, I used to be and where it's not, and every cabinet meeting, he would remind me about the project and what you would do. If you open a parlor selling Mobi and Zabuka, he was there. Mm-hmm. And I say, wait, he had nothing else to do. A little community center somewhere in Tumacaco, wherever the hell it is. He had to be there. So it's clear to me, the hubris went to his head. It went to his head. It went to Manning head. Yeah. When Manning had reached the point where he could talk about spiritual leader and building this hell of a big thing up in the thing and carrying this woman to meet Benny Hinn, all of these signals, it's good that we could discuss these two, Tony, because it is even in your own family. When you see certain signals, whether it be your spouse or your children, depending on the level of communications, you got to look at it and say, well, are you going out of control? But instead of that, all the people who criticize Dr. Rowley today, including Foster Cummins, where were they when he was carrying on that one-man show, buffing, insulting? You hear the stories coming out today, Tony, of how he spoke to people, including Jennifer Baptiste, how he buffed some of his ministers. And it just coincides with the views Manning expressed about him, the raging bull.
Yeah. And he was
He was
always right about everything. His
everything.
interaction with the
He was
media,
more right.
his responses to a citizen making a point about something, he always had the notion that
And he was
he had
also
a
right.
godlike right to take a position, whatever that
Well, he was
position was.
there. He saw him. He saw him and he saw the behavior. But we close our eyes to it. And he was only right about that. Don't ever forget, Tony, you're a political journalist. Some of the people that Manning rejected, I don't want to call names on the phone. He brought them back,
Yeah.
2010, Manning rejected.
Okay. I see Robert's name is here. Robert, are you there? Okay, Robert, I don't know if you're hearing us, but your microphone is closed. Maybe that's a problem.
Yeah,
So
he needs
if
to
you're
unmute.
hearing, you've opened the microphone. You're hearing us now, Robert.
Yes, I am hearing you loud and clear. Are you hearing me?
Wonderful. And your colleague, Ferdi Fererriah, is here, giving us a sense of the overview of, reflections on why the PNM declined so dramatically between 2015 and 2025. And he was speaking directly about the leadership and the role that the political leader and Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, came to play in all of that. I asked Ferdi the question, which I'm going to put to you now. What do you think were some of the major reasons, plural, that this decline happened within the PNM between the 2015 and 2025 election? In the first instance, the CSO figure, not CSO, the EBC figures indicated that the PNM lost approximately 50,000 supporters in the 2020 election compared to 2015, and overall between 2015 and the present, 150,000 voters, whether they were, hardcore supporters of the party or people who simply wanted to vote for the PNM instead in preference to the opposition. What in your mind, some of the things, and obviously in such a matter, there can be no one single thing, but what are some of the things in your mind that caused this decline of support for the PNM?
Well, good day, Tony, and of course, Ferdi, a hearty good evening to you. And I'm sure that you all have been in discussions for the past hour. So I know I'm not sure that I am even worthy to add much to say when you had some conversations with a person like Ferdi Ferreira on PNM matters. But I will give my 2 cents. As you said, it is not going to be one particular issue. The PNM, I think, first coming now from PNM was attempting to go into a third term as an electorate. And therefore, you will find anyone who have governed for 2 consecutive terms and going into a third term, there's always going to be some challenge of not ever being able to meet the expectations of all. So I want to put that up there as one of the reasons, and that will normally lead to some type of decline. I mean, I also I was very active in the local government campaign in the 2023 election. And I was in the field in Labray. And there are a number of the infrastructure in Labray. A number of the people were feeling neglected in Labray. And I witnessed, again, PNM, the polling divisions, as we were normally winning. We continue to win, but I witnessed a 50% drop at that point in time in the actual margins of victory. All right, so the UNC was actually maintaining their particular percentages, and our voters, 50%. And in the field, there were a lot of people who did not particularly like, they didn't like the level of representation they were getting from the present MP as one, and they felt a total need of the neglect, lack of infrastructure development from the PNM generally. So I would say that this decline happened, I saw it from the local government election in 2023. I think the leadership style of Dr. Rowley was always been, which ironically, as the new opposition leader said, it was the style that people voted for. Dr. Rowley has never changed his style. But I think that style as a prime minister, people probably expected him to evolve. That did not happen. And therefore, there was a certain level of to want of a better word, arrogance that was being displayed at the time that people did not find themselves open to. The PNM, and again, on the ground during the period, especially in the 2020 election, you found that there was a lot of people who felt that they were starting to experience a certain degree of hardship, and that the amount of the empathy that they expected from the PNM, they were not getting it. And they couldn't seem to relate to what was happening. And although, yes, they understood, and we were there talking about oil prices down and what we came and met in the treasury and so forth, but they were starting to signal from that point that they were not happy. That then, the signals that came to the party in 2020 and in 2023 were basically ignored. And it went on to 2020, to this particular election. And as a matter of fact, in some cases, people felt that it got worse. Some people were not happy with how the COVID situation was managed, with the closing down and the heartless manner in which a number of people were left stranded outside. So that was some edging away of how people felt as a result of how they perceived the senseless manner in which the PNM dealt with the COVID. So that took away some degree of. Then there was the concept of the salaries and the lack of salary increases. That, again, took a dent into the PNM. Then there was the whole idea of the accepting of the salary increases. That took a dent in behalf of the PNM. Just today, I was sitting in Adams and I was talking to a lady, and she just could not bring herself, a staunch PNM, into accepting that why is it that public servants are living on 2013 wage increases, 2013 salaries, and you could see yourself taking a salary of that level. You explained to her that 90% of the people in the report were really public servants too. It didn't matter. She could not bring herself to understand. I think the way in which, and that then just demonstrated a whole built-up of frustration. And then, as in everything else, there's some straws that break the camel's back. And I think the way in which Dr. Rowley handled the succession plan, the way in which he canceled the convention, the way in which he then installed or used his power to manipulate and install a prime minister of his choice. All right? I think people were silently disapproved of that and didn't approve of the manner in which their views were totally ignored out of the process. And they looked and they stood by and then finally, the final point on it was when they were ignored and people told the leadership that they weren't happy with that process and that the ground was not happy with the process. Within one day that the prime minister got nominated, to show their insensitivity towards the fact that, well, all right, I need to go and sell myself to the people, right? Election was called. So it's almost like, listen, this is what we're doing. We hear that you might not be happy, but this is how we are going to do it. I think all of that put together has resulted in the membership feeling a certain disjointed way, and they register their lack of support and their lack of belief that, or I wouldn't want to use the word entitlement, but they didn't believe that they were getting the type of representation and sensitivities that they deserve, and that represented. They put that support by actually not going out to vote. So a combination of factors.
One of the responses of Dr. Rowley at that point in time, and I would like to hear Ferdi and yourself on this matter, when there was contention about the process not being followed, the convention, the election of a political leader and so on by the mass of the party, his response was that he had a responsibility not to leave it open, not to leave the position open, because there would have been conflict and mayhem thereafter if he had not done what he did. That is, select a politician to be the prime minister of the country. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would think, listen, I spent my whole life in management, all right? And people managing people. And I could tell you, I've always used the word that the process is just as important as the end result. And it's either you believe in the process of people, and if you want something done, and even if you know it is the right thing to do, and you come in as a manager and you say, this is what we're doing, yes, or do you go the extra mile, have a conversation, have a discussion, explain, and then get participation and buy-in. And you will always find that the latter is much more sustainable than the former. And therefore, I hear what that might be his view. But history has shown with other places where this process has been taking place, what he spoke about did not happen. Instead, that is a method that is used to make people buy in. Right? It gives the new candidate the types of exposure. It allows for the new candidate to go out and sell their policies, and it allows people to connect better. And 90% of the times, if you feel that you are part of a process that resulted in someone, your buy-in into the process is a lot stronger and a lot more committed. That happens in management when you have to manage people in any institution to get anything done as a leader. So I think, again, it was poor judgment on his part, plain and simple. He misread, and that is in keeping. There are leaders that lead like that, but those leaders always result even from a management perspective, in a lack of buy-in from the people. And that is exactly what happened.
Really, your response to Dr. Rowley's claim is that if he didn't do what he did, there could be chaos and confusion left behind. And he did not want to do that.
Well, Tony, let me say hello to my good friend Robert Leon. Welcome back home.
Thank you. Came in yesterday.
Yes, Robert. But let us take quickly the history of the PNM. Rowley is in no position. When Williams died on the 29th of March 1981, as a matter of fact, to put it in the proper context only, all PNM leaders are by accident, not design, beginning with Eric Williams. If Eric Williams had been successful in his objective to become chairman of the Caribbean Commission, we might never, in 1955, we might never have seen the light of PNM. One, it is there in Selwyn Ryan's book. He has a whole chapter of what I said. Two, Chambers, but another accident. Nobody in the PNM, I was an officer of the party, in 1980 1981 when William expected George Chambers to become Prime Minister. Two, Chambers came in at odds at 10,000 to 1. Everybody expected I'd be Kamal or Errol Mahabir. 3, Manning came in at odds at 28,000 to 1. 33-3. Padma get licked up. Mahabir get licked up. Kamal, all the people down the who had a claim or who had been looked at. So for him to come, so this is the history of the PNM. No leader has ever in the PNM attempted to impose or even to recommend. Chambers, when he lost, he borrowed grace for the. He wrote a letter to the party saying he has resigned and the decision is irrevocable. Manning made the unfortunate mistake of coming to the General Council meeting with a resignation letter and telling the General Council he's prepared. It was one of the most absurd and insensitive pieces. You just put the party, twice you did it, the second time, into defeat, and you come with a letter telling them. Unfortunately, because Manning was a very good leader and a good point. So for when Rowley was no favorite, it just happened. And Robert could tell you this, Rowley had already been on a political descent. He had been removed as a deputy political leader. He had been removed from the cabinet. And he almost was not a candidate in 2010. These are facts. So Rowley has no authority to me. If he don't do it the way it ought to be done, PNM have a history of the leaders emerging out of strange circumstances, as I explained before. If Manning didn't call the general election in 2010, 2.5 years, we might never have seen. It is an accident. It was, I don't know how to describe it. Up to today, I don't think anybody could describe the justify or reason for that action. 2.5 years before they were due. Having said previously, I am the most disliked, unpopular man. Manning said it just before. He said, I'm the most unpopular man in the country today. And shortly after that, he called an election. So Rowley himself just happened to be in the right place at the right time to conceive the thought that if I don't give only the right man, could be nothing short of absurdity. I said, and I supported Robert and Jennifer Battis when they were the ones that raised it, and people like Marilyn Gordon and Ashton Ford and them went on to support him. You see, when good people stay quiet, that was going on. What was being going on, Robert knows about it. Twice he rejected Robert in Labrie. On this occasion, he rejected a fine young man, the chairman of the Labrie constituency. Robert knows what I'm talking about. Fine young man for Randy Mitchell. When it reaches that stage, that level of hubris, that you are Lord Almighty, I am the one. If I ain't here, or they were dead. If I ain't lead or they were buried in the Red Sea, that is where it reached, and we paid a heavy, heavy price for it. Today, I don't know if Robert heard what I said. You are appointing a leader of opposition, but the party have no political leader. If Penny Beckwith is qualified or meets your satisfaction to be the face of the party in the national parliament as opposition leader, why can't the General take a decision to appoint a temporary interim political leader? It's not in the Constitution. I say if it's not in the Constitution, General have the account. So if she's there, Rowley had Shortjob on a leash, and the party now have Penny on a leash. All these things. The party
Let me ask both Robert and Ferdi, and just to inform our listeners and viewers, we are talking about the demise in the election, that is. We're not talking about long-term demise necessarily. The beating inflicted on the PNM by its supporters and those who had voted for the party in the previous two elections. And we're talking with Robert Lehunt, who was a minister in the Rowley government, and he exited the seat.
And also a deputy political leader of the party.
Yes, and Ferdi Fererriah, who has been, I call him, if we call Kitchener the Grandmaster of Calypso, we have to call Ferdi Fererriah the Grandmaster of the political party called the PNM. Gentlemen, if we look to the future and to make some, ignore the sound of the phone in the background, we're going to get somebody off of it in a moment. But let's look at the future now. And when we talk about the future of a beaten political party like the PNM, there are those who point to 1986, and it could not have been worse in that period when there was 33-3, and the PNM was left out to dry, as Ferdi made the point some time ago, that Patrick Manning came from nowhere, the least of the apostles, to lead the PNM back to victory in 5 years. I remember my own self covering that election campaign, and when the results came through, thinking that the PNM would be out in the field for 20-25 years, 5 years, and the party returned. Is it possible that something like that will happen again, or is the PNM dedicated to be in opposition and perhaps worse for a longer period of time this time around?
You want
So,
Robert?
you want to tackle that? Anyone, come in and,
Yes,
and
Robert,
talk.
let's go ahead and I will.
Huh? Yeah,
Then Robert, go ahead.
okay. So let's start by. I mean, I think a clear message or a message was sent by the numbers that you talked about. All right. Now, the true thing about it, it matter wherever you come in life. One thing about numbers, they do not lie, or you might want to interpret them in your own way, right? But they don't lie. PNM now have 13, and the truth of the matter is, if you look at some of those constituencies, that number could have actually come down to about 11 or 10, right? Because just they have to actually tank some split votes from the other parties for winning those numbers. So there was a clear signal sent. Now, at the end of the day, what we all have witnessed and we have seen an attempt by the UNC to lure a number of the PNM supporters. And I think we have to also accept that there have been some movements of some people into of the PNM hardcore supporters into the UNC. However, I think to the fact that the 100 and something people, 100,000 voters, they did not go to the UNC. They are presently on the fence. They stayed away. They expressed their dissatisfaction by staying away. The PNM now, how do you take that? The PNM basically needs to rekindle, retool themselves, and put themselves in a position to reach out to these 100,000 voters who have sent a signal. They were once your supporters. They are now on the exit out of the party. And the PNM needs to go out there and do what is required to re-energize and get those people. That will depend on how the PNM leads, what is the approaches that are taken, and you are now in opposition. So your ability to be able to exercise any amount of, I wouldn't use the word goodies or incentives, you have less to bargain with. So you have to really bargain with your heart, with your service, right? And opposition is no fun. So that is sadly where Dr. Rowley has brought the PNM to. And that is the truth. That is what the figures say. So it is not going to be easy, but it is possible. In the case of the UNC, right, now the UNC has an opportunity, right, because these people are sitting in the lobby, they are in the waiting room, right, and they have power. They could manage in a way to allow and lure these people across. So it really depends on what happens to an extent on how the UNC manages will determine to a larger extent what will be the success of the PNM. Now, the PNM needs to do what they need to do, all right? But to the extent that the UNC continues to manage in the manner as historically they have done, and show that they are not prepared to welcome into the party a broader group of people, then that will rebound to the PNM success. If the UNC changes their form and manages in a different manner, then it will be more difficult for the PNM to be able to achieve the goal that was achieved previously, right? But whatever it is, it requires a certain change in the mannerism and the leadership style of the PNM. The truth of the matter, whether right or wrong, the PNM, whenever they win an election, the PNM, in their quest to be a national party, they always manage in a manner that appears to be national, but they almost do it at the disadvantage their own constituencies that they are called upon to lead. And it's almost, and that has been a recent history in the leadership and PNM. That is something that the PNM needs to change, because it is clear when you look at some of the constituencies that have been under the control of the PNM, even when PNM is in power, their infrastructure and the work that is needed, the schools that are there, the focus on the support systems that are required, that those things are not put in place to support the constituencies and the PNM areas. So not only does the PNM have to change its philosophy in how they try to win the people, but people have to be convinced that this time around, when you return to power, that you will not revert as you have done in the past to your old ways of managing.
Robert, let me ask you very directly. Is the sidelining of Stuart Young, who was Prime Minister yesterday, for Penelope Beckles, or it could be anybody else, is that a signal that the electorate can take as classifying PNM, reclassifying, reconfirming the PNM as a Black People Party, and Stuart Young is an aberration, which has to be corrected, and which has been corrected?
Let me say, let me say that I think what the PNM and what the message that was sent is a rejection of a type of leadership. All right? It's a rejection of a type of leadership. I think that's how the PNM, yes, it has an African base, but I think the PNM has always shown, by virtue of the fact that they have always managed in a manner that they have even done it to the negative consequences of their own constituency, right? That they are not necessarily a racial group. Stuart Young, as a person, had a management style that was too similar to that of Dr. Rowley. Stuart Young was not able, neither did he give himself time to separate himself from Dr. Rowley. And Stuart Young's history in dealing with people was too similar in style to Dr. Rowley. And people within the PNM rejected that management style. I think if Stuart Young, forget about the race, it had nothing to do with race from my perspective and from a number of individuals. If Stuart Young possessed a different management style, and was able to convince people that this management style was this new style is real, then Stuart Young might have been able to be accepted. People rejected the management style of Stuart Young, the arrogance or the perceived arrogance, the bullying or the perceived bullying, all right? And the fact that you cannot be rejecting Dr. Rowley and saying that his Gary Sobers who is the person beloved and given all the responsibility, is now what you want. So Stuart Young had a problem of association that has now been removed. And as I said, it's sometimes I agree you do throw away the baby with the bathwater, but I think at this time the PNM is rejecting a management style that they do not want as part of their leadership.
Okay,
Has nothing to do with race.
That's the view of Robert Hunte, a former PNM minister, a former deputy political leader of the party, and so on, talking about the selection of Penelope Beckles to lead the party instead of, well, lead the party in the parliament as opposition leader, not the political leader at this point in time. Talking about Stuart Young and why the choice in his mind, his analysis as to why the choice of Beckles or I presume anyone else would be a superior choice at this point in time to go into Stuart Young. Fererriah, your view on it?
Yes. Tony, I agree with most of what my friend Robert is saying. Where I beg to disagree with him. As far as I'm concerned, this is my personal opinion. I have listened. I'm home. I'm a PI, a professional idler. I listen to the meetings. And I told you earlier on, Stuart Young, a very good product that was badly packaged and badly marketed. I continue to believe, even at this stage, I don't know Stuart Young as well as Robert know him. I don't know him too well. I've got to meet him with. But I listen to the meetings, I listen to the presentations, and as far as I am aware, Robert may be more familiar and better known to them than I am. Stuart Young, in my opinion, is still the best bet for the leadership of the party. He's a relatively young man, and I agree, he became a clone. Well, Dr. Rowley had him on a leash, and with his inexperience, and I suppose he had nobody around him to tell him. I wrote it. I say, be your own man. You remember it was in The Guardian. I said, the first thing you have to disconnect yourself. Be your own man. Set your own standards. Unfortunately, that did not go. So I agree with Robert when he said, in that sense. But however, right, is that looking at the PNM team today and what is available, I remain convinced until otherwise someone can convince that Stuart Young is the only other person to me, and to me is the most attractive Afro in the PNM, is Dr. Amory Brown. And unfortunately, coming back to that, one of the disasters and one of the things that Rowley should never be forgiven for is not putting Amory Brown in a safe seat. Amory Brown today continues, this is my opinion, to be the most attractive Afro Trinidadian face in the PNM. But he was not given a safe seat. I don't know if the new leader would have the political will to put him in the Senate. Outside of that, the party has taken a decision. The parliamentarians, supported by the party, to make Penny Beckles the leader of the opposition. Having done that, they have a responsibility now, as quickly as possible, don't wait for no convention, to give her the opportunity to become interim leader of the party. And if Stuart Young is the patriot he claims to be, is a party member, he's a relatively young man, he has the opportunity to regain or as Robert correctly said, to reorganize himself and become more acceptable to the party members. It's a pretty long haul, but history is what we have to be guided by. And PNM, with 220,000 votes, a base of 220,000 votes, And what transpired and what continues to unveil quietly, I don't want to get into any details at this stage, provide them with the perfect recipe to reconstruct, reorganize. What is required right now is who to lead it and how to do it.
So we are talking with Ferdi Ferreira and Robert Hunt, two solid PNM members, talking about the future, talking about what has to be done, talking about the leadership contest, which will go on in a fundamental way when it comes to the convention of the party. And it may very well be that other people emerge as possibilities, inclusive, of course, of the Penelope Bettles, who is the leader, or will be, I think she was sworn in this afternoon, as the leader of the party in the parliament.
No,
in other words, the leader of the opposition.
Leader of the opposition.
Which is different, of course, from the political leader of the party.
Tony, Tony, 1 minute. If I can jump in here, I would. There's a question that's been on my mind. And I think these two gentlemen might be able to help me answer it, Mr. Ferreira and, of course, Mr. Lee Hunt. Charles here. Mr. Young being put into the position of the Prime Minister, and Mr. Lee Hunt mentioned it, and soon after decided, just a day or maybe 2 days after that, decided to call an election. What do you all feel was responsible for that? Because people are speculating and have all different kinds of thoughts. People are talking about it may have been because the opposition was pressing, talking about what was happening was not a legal process, and they would have gone to court, and they felt that the PNM administration at that point in time may have found some merit in that, and before it created a problem, decided to call the election. So I'm asking you two gentlemen, your different views as to why do you feel that election was called so early?
Very good point.
Let me jump in there on that. I mean, I think that the election was called early. Again, let's understand the PNM and the psyche of the PNM and their leadership where they were. There was a total disjointment with what was happening with the beast. They were living in their own bubble, all right, not understanding that the beast was on.
Not the PNM, not the party, Robert, not the party, right? The leadership.
The leadership, not the PNM, the leadership. They did not have an understanding of what was happening with the beast. And that is that type of. And if you look at the types of decisions that were made, right, by not going to the convention, they were all part of that disjointment, right? At the end of the day, Dr. Rowley, in his own disjointing view of the popularity of the organization, I think he actually felt he was popular. I think he really felt that his legacy was one that ran this country for the past 4.5 years and was able to stand its time. I think he felt, well, what is the sense holding on for the next 3 months? Is my legacy that they have to vote on anyway? What will 3 more months do that didn't happen in 4.5 years? I think he misunderstood the fact that the only hope that Xiao Qiong had was to distance himself from him. If he even understood that, he would have realized he should not even come on the campaign trail to even to remind people that he exists. So much that he was not popular. But by virtue of even the subsequent decisions coming on the campaign trail, wanting to speak last, wanting to dictate, he did not understand his level of unpopularity. And basically, that is why I believe that they went ahead and called the election, because they honestly believed that with Dr. Rowley's legacy, that was great. Plus,
Robert, you're saying they. You're saying they. I don't agree with the
Not
day.
not
That's
the
why
day.
he went ahead.
The leadership, the leadership,
He admitted,
and
but he
not
admitted
even they.
publicly. Correct. He
He.
admitted that
So
if he fixed it,
so that is what it is now. Now, by the way, I also want to comment that I agree with Ferdi about the perception of Avery Brown, but it was Avery Brown and the present chairman and the same Stuart Young, not Dr. Rowley, and the present chairman Stuart Young, who ensured that Avery Brown did not get the seat that I think he rightly deserved for Diego Martin West. I believe this whole thing that they talked about, Avery Brown is a diplomat. Avery Brown has been representing this country as the foreign affairs minister. This leak that came out in the newspaper, all of that was just an attempt to destroy. And it's again is the type of leadership whereby anybody strong that emerges, they are cut down and removed. So I again, that was the reason. That was the misunderstanding, the misconnection, right, with the base. That is what drove a lot of the decisions, including that one of calling the election right after Stuart Young came into being, without recognizing the need to distance the leadership style of Stuart Young and also understanding. I honestly believe, had Stuart Young, even if he had come in the manner in which he did, if he had made his first moves in cabinet, spent another 6 months out on the field, showing people how different he is, connecting with the people and letting them understand that, oh Lord, don't worry, good times are coming, I am different. I am not Dr. Rowley's style. Or you might perceive that of me, but I am not like that. And showing people that he wasn't, I think I'm not sure the results might have been different.
I know I was surprised that the election was called, 2 weeks or so after he was made prime minister. I saw.
No, one day.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, in terms of the election going forward, but I was of the opinion that he had an option, a possibility of doing something in that 6-month period of time that he had before him, just like Robert has said, to distinguish himself and to say to the national community that he had capacity and ideas and possibilities to leave with the country, and that might have done him some benefit. But I wonder, in the back of my mind, even if that in itself was dictated by Dr. Rowley, he wanting to leave. He didn't hide his anxiety to leave town right after. And therefore, if one person leaves the cabinet and the numbers are getting close, it could have been very dangerous in those circumstances. But I thought that Stuart Young could have and should have allowed himself some time to show that he had some kind of capability of transforming the situation from how Dr. Rowley had left it. I don't know what Ferdi thinks.
Tony, there are 4 or 5 unforgettable and unforgivable acts in the political electoral history of this country. Let me begin with number 1. The postponement of the 1956 general election by the Gums government. I don't know if you remember that. The elections were due in November 1955, 2 months before the vote of the PNM.
Yeah.
The Gums government postponed it for 1 year to amend the constitution. Up comes the PNM on January 24, and within 9 months, throw out all 5 ministers lost. No, Victor Bryan won his, and Joe Singh. 3 minutes. That is one. The second was Dr. Rudranath Kapildio's statement at one of the largest meetings I've ever attended. It had about 20,000 people at the Grand Savannah, when he instructed his followers to mash up the voting machines and made some atrocious, stupid political statements that could have put this country into civil war. I don't know if you remember that, but it's part of our history. The third was Manning decision to call an election 14 months they were due in 1995. The fourth was Manning decision again in 2010 to call a general election 2 months before they were due. And the fifth and final is the level of political stupidity of a prime minister who is not of a political leader who is not the prime minister of a country to select his successor, having installed Monday, pick a cabinet Tuesday, and Wednesday morning calling it. In the life of the political history of this country, I have known of more 5 blunders worse than, and the consequences, but are well known to people. What was you thinking? What was going through your mind when Stuart Young was installed as Prime Minister? Pick a cabinet, bring in Dan Paul, fly him in here, appoint him Minister of Finance. It means clearly that you, the leader, I ain't talking about dear like Robert, I talk about he, the leader. It is nothing short of the maximum behavior of hubris. I am the Lord thy God. And if I say so, is so. Same thing. When I asked Dr. Rowley, Wendell Motley, we were having lunch at Glencoe after the election defeat in 1995, and I showed them a report at the elections office I submitted to Patrick Manning on the 14th of June 1995, advising him against the election. When I saw it, when Dr. Rowley saw it, we were having Wendell Motley, they're alive. When Dr. Rowley, they were deputies. Dr. Rowley asked Wendell Motley, Wendell, you saw this? And Wendell said, no. He said, I don't know where this come from. And Rowley replied, Ferdi, if I had seen this, he couldn't call no election. This is what he took the decision. Stuart Young became the victim. As Robert correctly said, the clone, poor fellow, young man. And nobody was prepared to tell him. Stuart Young tell him, no, chief, put me here, give me a break. As again, Robert correctly said, let me blossom now. Let me show my feet. You ain't give him 48 hours to let the people know who he is. And you soak him before the wolves.
Tony, I have one more question. Gentlemen, do you think that this move, and now that Mr. Young is no longer having that kind of power and popularity within the party. Ms. Beckles is now the opposition leader, and most likely I believe she would probably be the political leader. How far down the road does this push Stuart Young before he comes back, or if he can come back, to be political leader again of the PNM? Does this push him back 10 years, 15 years? How long do you see it?
That's a matter for he and he alone to decide. It depends on how he displays, how he, as I said earlier on, he's 50 years of age, so he has enough time to reclone himself. That's a matter for him.
I asked him that question at the news conference when it was yesterday, and what he threw up front was that he's a life member of the party.
Correct.
And he has no intention of going anywhere, not in those words, but that was the meaning of what he said. So in other words, he is there, and he must have an appreciation of what the contest is going to be like, or contests, plural, going to be like into the future. And from all that he has said on his attitude, he seemed well aware and well intent to fight going forward.
Listen, my view on that, yes, that depends on him. And it really is. I mean, I think people would have seen Stuart Young rise in the party as one that has been on the coattail of not really being in the bowels of the party. I mean, I have been a member of PNM since I joined the PNM as a party group member since 1985. before coming out of university. I have held positions in every single position in the PNM in the constituency straight up my life. That's my life. Stuart Young's, and then I became a cabinet minister and so forth. Stuart Young, I'm not saying that has to be the rule of everyone. And Stuart Young, therefore, needs to, for want of a better word, pay some dues and let people believe that he wants to be part of the PNM, all right? And he wants to stick around. I think there's a good chance with Penelope Beckles in being able to, and her leadership style, to re-energize the PNM. I think there's a saying, and I said it this morning on another show, and I know we use it for Dr. Rowley as a team, but there's a right leader at the right time. And what is required right now is the Penelope Beckles style of leadership. Stuart Young needs to emerge or come again, and it depends on how he deals with that and what commitment he has to really serving the people rather than just being in power is where the metal meets the road, the rubber meets the road when you are in opposition. So we will see what he is made of, right? And I wish him well. I wish he could stick around because I think he's a bright person. I think he's a person. And I also believe that he will probably try to go for being political leader. I think the party will go for convention. Ferdi, I hear your suggestion that we should have an interim leader. I am not aware as of fully conversant with the convention, with the statutes and so forth of the Constitution. But if that is possible, from my understanding, it is not possible.
Immediately Chambers succeeded Williams. He became the leader of the party.
Yep, but that's because. But anyhow, if that is
the same thing happened with Rowley. Remember, Dr. Rowley led us shortly after.
He became. What I remember again, I have learned in life never to challenge or even to I mean, Ferdi is the encyclopedia of the PNM. My recollection of Dr. Rowley was that he became the opposition leader and then he ran in a convention for the political leader of which Penelope of which then he ran for political leader. But whatever it is, I think, for example,
your point, Robert, between the night, that fateful, that historical night, who led the party before the convention?
I think it's exactly what it is at this point in time. There was no political leader.
Dr. Rowley led it. We had a by-election shortly after, and Dr. Rowley led the party. Manning led the party. So to say, it's not in the Constitution. There was never any dispute about Chambers, Dr. Rowley, or Manning.
Well, all right, but I think what will happen is that I will expect, if I have to look into a crystal ball, I will think Stuart Young would probably challenge together with Mrs. Beckles. They both will run for political leader of the PNM, and I think the PNM will go to a convention as early as the next 2 months. So this matter will be solved of who is the political leader.
Robert,
I will expect. No, I'm just saying what I anticipate will happen. I'm not saying that that is right.
Yeah, but
right
Robert,
now,
let's be a little more practical. Suppose, let's come to sense of reality though. Suppose at the convention, Penny runs and loses. What is the party position? Penny the leader of the opposition.
No, and somebody what I suspect will happen there, right? If Penny runs and loses, right, at the convention, something that I don't think will happen, but if we have to go through the process, I think at that point in time, all that will happen is that seeing that Stuart Young is now the political leader, the party will rally around Stuart Young to be
not the party. It's not the party. You're talking, remember, the leader of opposition is selected by the parliamentarians, not the party.
Well, you know what? I think
so you create a recipe for confusion.
No, I think at that point in time, all right, I think at that point in time, if there is a full-fledged elections and Stuart Young emerges as the political leader, I am convinced that good sense will prevail, and he will then be made opposition leader.
So in other words, Robert, the
Parliamentarians
party
have to
will
select
fall
him.
in line if the convention makes a determination in favor of Young over Penelope Beckles. Yes, that's what you're saying.
That is
And
what I
but
think
yes,
will
if the
happen.
parliament,
All right, let's hear Ferdi's response to that.
but if the parliamentarians say they don't, if the parliamentarians short win, he becomes political leader. And the parliamentarians say he could be political leader, but he's not opposition leader. And if you recall, let us remember history. You know, when Rowley became leader of the opposition, do you know, and I am sure you remember this, Manning went on a mission to get signatures from the parliamentarians. Ask Donna Cox, ask Paula Gopi-Schoon to write Max Richards to tell them that Rowley leader the party. Don't forget what happened, you know. You will remember it now, I'm telling you. They came to my home here. They wrote to tell them that Rowley's distant, Manning, he went and sit down at the last table and he kept calling Donna Cox, Paula Gopi-Schoon, the boy that recently died in Laventille here, was in Parliament, trying to get them to sign a letter saying Rowley the leader of the party, but Manning the leader of the opposition. Am I wrong? You remember that, Tony?
Well, you know what? But you know what? Let me tell you. If you want to talk, that was possible. That happened. But remember, it was possible under this election. All right.
Yeah.
It was possible the way how Dr. Rowley orchestrated it and allowed it to happen. You could have had a situation where the government, somebody would have won the election. Dr. Rowley is the political leader. The people, the 12 or the 20 people that brought Mr. Young in as the interim prime minister or as the prime minister, you now have a new group of people who would have won. At that point in time, they could have selected who they wish among themselves because Dr. Rowley is the political leader and he was out of the house. But to make matters even worse, even if they had selected Mr. Young, and then the party goes to a convention in September to pick a political leader, it was theoretically possible for a new political leader to be selected outside of Mr. Young, and then you would have had Mr. Young as prime minister, all right, selected among his 23 colleagues, and the party picked somebody else as political leader, and now we would have been in the same situation. So
well, you see, all of that, Robert, is good
confusion started with Dr. Rowley introducing this in the first place.
That is the perfect recipe for disaster. Why should there be? And Manning, what they once started it, they followed them in nylon police. You know who saved the situation? You know who made responsible for Rowley becoming leader of the opposition? The member for Port of Spain North. Forget her name, but the teacher girl. She migrated, the husband is an oil man. If she had signed that letter,
McIntosh.
Manning would have been leader of the opposition and Rowley would have been the political leader. That makes sense. That is the perfect recipe for disaster. Because
I agree with
one of them, they're still wrong. Amy Brown was one of them that supported Manning. Paula Gopi-Schoon supported Manning. Alicia Hospitales, I could call the names. They support. That's one of the things that Manning, that Rowley had against Amy Brown. That's one of the things to keep in his mind. Amy Brown, Paula Gopi-Schoon, neither the bullet. I don't think Marlene was there. Yeah. They wanted 6 signatures. There were 12 of them in Parliament.
What we are sure of,
wanted 6 similar situations were up here, and they were only to get 5.
Yeah. is that
The last one, the time it was
it's
the member
going to
for
be a
Northeast Forest,
challenging
which
road
I did
ahead
now,
for the People's
out
National
manual.
Movement,
So
but they have come
these are
back from
preceded.
even more difficult situations in the
Tony,
past,
do you
and
remember that
therefore
situation?
all is possible in the political run forward down the road. One of the important events to come off in the party into the future, I don't know how long it's going to be, would be the convention of the party where a political leader is selected. And I think in good PNM style, if Penny Beckles is selected as the political leader, all will fall in line. It may be a little bit of a challenge if Stuart Young or anyone else succeeds in getting the vote of the convention to be the political leader. There will have to be another transition there, and that can pose some challenges for the party. But going forward, the challenge for the bigger challenge for the PNM is to make an impression on the electorate left behind, that the party is now ready to do all of the things that were not done between 2015 and 2025. Among them, transforming the nature of the economy, dealing with the crime situation, a very, very difficult thing which has been going on for, sometimes we think it has been going on for 10 years or 5 years or so on. It has been going on for more than 25 years, back into the 1990s. So those are some of the challenges in front of the party.
Tony, don't ever forget George Michael Chambers, almost political unknown. As soon as he came to office, what is wrong must be put right. Houses before horses.
Yes. So we want to thank very much Robert Hunt and Ferdi Fererriah for engaging the discussion this afternoon. And whether you're a PNM or not, there must be an opposition political force not to allow the UNC to run away with everything. I remember Lloyd Bess in one of the elections that the UNC won, his comment was to the effect that the pendulum had swung too far one side, and therefore we can't, it cannot be allowed that the pendulum can swing to either side for an extended period, because the experience has been that political parties in government, they have not been achieving the objectives that are required from them by the electorate. So we thank you very much for being on the program, starting a discussion which I am sure has many, many more episodes to go as the country goes forward. So thank you, Robert Hunt and Ferdi Fererriah, for being with us this afternoon. And over to you, Charlo.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much, Ferdi, for allowing me the opportunity to participate.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being on the program. And Tony Fraser, thank you very much for another great program. All right, stay with us. Coming up in a short, David Mohammed inside of the Black Agenda.
But somebody promising more police car. Somebody going to take the country far. Somebody putting all the bandits away. He said if they do the crime, they're going to damn well pay. But somebody promising a human rights, while somebody threatening